We're here to solve this Yajilin even rows and columns variation by Grant Fikes called fortysomething. And it's got a very open grid, and that's possible because of these variant rules. It only has two clues, this 4 and 0, and those are where the fortysomething theme comes from. We're going to, like we have for the rest of this week, focus first on how a speed solve of this puzzle looks. And so here is my blind solve of the puzzle as I got this in the testing week. You'll see it as a part of the testing week. Its original title, maybe from Circon, maybe from Grant, was 40. And 40 was a little dry for me. So as I actually get through and solving this, I suggested a different name. And that the theme's a little bit asymmetric. 40 something with a question mark seemed a little bit playful there. Here the solve, probably like a lot of yours, followed that 4 down clue and all the consequences around it. Seeing that even row constraint in the first column, one of those two x's in the first row or third row is pretty important. You get a line segment coming across, and I'm keeping track of my columns. You'll see I'm actually consciously making check marks outside the grid in the speed solving mode to just know when I've actually fulfilled those constraints, then watching those constraints carefully. And so as I'm writing in that black cell, I need to get one more, mark that in. As I'm going up one more row now, oh, I still need to make 2 cells in that row, and then I'm filling that in. I still need 2 more in the next row. And so in each case, I'm basically just powering through the variant rule as much as I can because I know that's how a very open grid is going to drive. And even knowing Grant's puzzle writing style a lot, this is going to be a fairly narrow solving path, but it's going to be one that if you just keep following it, you're going to be pretty good. There's something interesting that comes through in that 6th row. If it turns out if you shade this cell, the loop comes left and up, then still shades the cell on the right. So the cell on the right is always shaded and the other is left open. And so I was running into that. I'm now coming through and seeing where I had like 2 cells in the 8th column. Could I get 4 cells in the 8th column? I'm going to do the same thing then in the 5th row. I'm going to like see, can I put 2 shaded cells in and have it work? And sometimes this is where I could probably speed myself up and not always use my fingers to visualize. But sometimes when I just want to put something in the grid, I like block the cells I need to be blocking with my hands and then draw the rest in. I'm putting an X that I need for that 4th row. I'm putting that for the 7th column, 6th column, 5th column, and now coming back and thinking carefully about a set of these cells because I'm sure that the break-in is going to be in that top part where there's only one option. I'm excited by getting that 2 cell X, but it's not doing enough to the left of it right now. I'm now looking at cells like that cell in the 3rd row, 6th column. If that's shaded, 2 other cells nearby are immediately shaded and they now will block off the grid. You can't get a single loop if you do that. So I'm getting now 2 options in the 6th column, but still not enough to make my big X's make sense. And so here is still like a tricky part for the puzzle, but a place where what I eventually found is probably not the only thing that can be found, but what I eventually found was something about the upper left corner, which is still not at all looking unique. It's going to be the even rows and columns rule that makes it unique, but there are places where around a 2-option grid, and so if I'm speed solving, I'll sometimes draw the rest of the loop in a very light color. I will eventually run into some forced things, and so notice that in that 3rd column, I'm writing quite dark, and so I have no doubt about those lines, and you might say, well, you're following a guess. I'm following 2 guesses at this moment actually in the solve, but I'm finding a path that's absolutely required and letting me then get back into logical spaces. I will still have to go back and resolve the either or nature of that left corner. So marking all the things off, I need to finally make 2 shaded cells in that 3rd row that finally finish these upper left. And that's the finish of this puzzle. So 3 minutes, 5 seconds was my clock time, and this would end up being the fastest across this testing set. Although there were still some other good solves just over 3 minutes, and then a lot more that took further out because there was some tricky stuff to do here along the top and upper left. So with that as the speed solve, let's come back to this puzzle and sort of give you some examples of what I was talking about as key steps. And so this is very much how most solvers will start this grid. In the video, I was missing this line segment for a while, but maybe let's actually come back to this stage. So with 4 shaded in this column, these cells have to be white. With none shaded in this column to this point, these have to be white. And actually at this stage, we know that these have to be white. And so this first column needs one more blackened cell. And the first thing to know is it can't be this position because that's going to make 2 corners that only a single loop end can enter and not exit. And so that will give you the fact that this is kind of the puzzle you're looking at this stage, where there is a blue or a red state of the world, where one of these cells is shaded, and in the other case, the other is open. And what I do mark in this grid is this line segment. That's because in one state of the world, these lines are drawn, in the other, these are drawn. But sometimes a key thing that's going to help you in these puzzles is to look a little further out from one of these points where you really have two options. And this is what the speech solving community will call a bifurcation. A bifurcation is not a guess. A guess could be, I've got 10 choices, let's pick one of them. This is when there are exactly two choices and I'm looking across them. So let me draw what red looks like. Again, this red cell being shaded. Loop comes up, loop comes over, loop comes down, loop comes over, loop comes up, loop comes over. That looks really good. A lot of loop being drawn, so it'd be great to follow that guess path. But what we aren't trying to do is actually just follow one guess path. We're trying to look quickly at both states of the world. And so let's start to draw in blue. In this case, blue comes up here, blue comes over here through this corner. And now blue continues right, and then blue does have to come down, and then does have to corner, and then does have to come up, and then does have to come corner. And so this is a step that some people will not get in the logic style of this. Let me go to a more obvious sort of color to show you here. From this cell to the right, and then down, and then right, and then up, and then right. Those line segments are the same in both states of the world, red or blue, which means they are actually known for sure. And so where none of those segments can be drawn in, all of these segments can. And so if you go back to how I was doing in the video, I was drawing these very dark because I was finally finding in a two-option state of the world stuff that was true in both of those states. And so finding something that's uniformly false in two states or uniformly true in two states is really helpful. And in this puzzle, it gets you all this progress, which is going to drive you through to the next stages of the solve. A lot of the cleanup you saw in the video, like getting to black cells in this row. In this case, I don't want to come through this cell, so I need to put a black cell here, but I always have to put in 2 in the row, so these come in quickly. This extends up, so I only have 2 for this space. This will still have to extend up. I need to get 1 more in this row, and so you saw, or maybe it's blocked by my hand, but you saw like if I take this one to the right, I can't have this work. So often when you have an either or, one of them will be for sure true. We now got to this stage where we had this either or choice, so one of these cells is blackened, but if this is blackened, I come this way and I leave behind a corner. So this being black and this being opened is required. Now 2 for this column, that comes up like so. These are all open. I can't put in 2 more in this column, so these are all open. And we're now sort of back to the things that were in the video, things like I need to put a shaded cell in here. I need to get 1 more in this column, and I then need to get 1 down here, but these loop ends need to dodge, and so this is the cleaner path. I need to get 1 more here, this second row needs to be there, this up here, and now the rest is just Yajilin loop connections. So the thing I really wanted to highlight in this video was that influence of red and blue, and where sometimes when you look a little further along a path that's somewhat constrained, you may find places where the 2 paths converge. And in this puzzle, that's super, super powerful, and it's probably, having found that, why I got one of the fastest solves in this grid. So thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you again soon.